On September 18th, 1989, Billy Joel released his new song, We Didn't Start the Fire. It quickly became one of the most popular songs, getting nominated for the Grammy Award for Record of the Year. The song itself is kinda like a recap of the years before it, mentioning most of the big events that happened. The chorus of the song repeats the phrase, "We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning." This refers to how newer generations get blamed for the problems of the world, but it really isn't their fault, as the problems have always existed. This is shown even more through the lyric, "No, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it." One of the events or problems that was mentioned in the song was the H-bomb, a type of bomb that uses nuclear fusion to create its massive explosion. But how did the hydrogen bomb even come to be? Well, it all started near the beginning of World War II. In early 1939, a bit before World War II began, people discovered that the Germans had learned how to split a uranium atom. Panic ensued as people worried of the incredible destruction the Nazis could create with this kind of power in a bomb. Two of these people, Albert Einstein and Enrico Fermi, decided to write a message to the president telling him to speed up development on atomic bombs. This project would later get its name as the Manhattan Project. Eventually, in 1942, Fermi and a group of physicists were able to produce the first controlled nuclear chain reaction in Stagg Field at the University of Chicago. More research was conducted, and in 1946, there was a reported conference on the super, that being the hydrogen bomb. The conference concluded that it was indeed possible to create, but needed lots of resources and time. What the people attending the conference didn't know, though, was that there was a communist spy reporting what they knew to the Soviet Union. This would end up with Russia setting off their own atomic weapon in late 1949, much to the dismay of the American people. Work on the H-bomb suddenly sped up with the fear of the Soviet Union overpowering the US. But now that more people knew what kind of destruction a bomb of this size can make, there was the debate of whether or not we should even make a hydrogen bomb. The debate of the hydrogen bomb was getting more intense, and the General Advisory Committee, a group that manages the development of nuclear technology in the US, decided to hold a special meeting that focused on 3 separate topics. The first topic wasn't super important here, as it talked about questions not directly related to hydrogen bombs, but the second topic was focused around the hydrogen bomb. The GAC concluded that the hydrogen bomb could be built, which was already concluded like 3 years ago, but whatever, and there were no limits on explosive power on these weapons, which makes them potentially incredibly dangerous for the future of mankind. The final topic of the discussion was the big one, whether or not we should continue making the hydrogen bomb. They ended up taking a vote, and the final verdict was that we shouldn't make it. But even with this decision from the committee, the debate of the hydrogen bomb continued to grow, and many people still wanted to make it and even use it. The president at the time, Harry Truman, didn't know what to do, so he asked a subdivision of the National Security Council for help. The subdivision had mixed feelings as well, but it was ultimately made clear that trying to stop development of the H-bomb was just not possible. So the decision was made to continue development, and since the president was basically taking advice from the NSC subdivision, he was even able to sign a request for it. And so, the debate of the hydrogen bomb ended, as the development of it continued. In early 1951, a series of nuclear tests known as Operation Greenhouse took place, the most important one being the George shot. The George shot was super important in the development of the H-bomb, and helped make the next operation, Operation Ivy, possible. Operation Ivy happened in November 1952, and it was really important because it was the first time thermonuclear weapons were actually tested. The first actual bomb that was tested here was the Mike shot, and it was the first hydrogen bomb ever tested. So yeah, that's cool. Anyways, after those tests, they continued working on improving the bombs, and in the spring of 1954, it was finally another batch of H-bomb tests, this time called Operation Castle. This time though, things didn't really go to plan. Turns out that the Bravo test was just a wee bit bigger than scientists predicted, and the explosion ended up being about 2.5 times bigger than it was supposed to be. So yeah, tons of people got the effects of radiation, and it was just this big disaster. After that failure, the actual danger of these bombs finally clicked in people's minds, and they stopped doing tests that big. And that's finally all you need to know about the story of the H-bomb. The hydrogen bomb had a big effect on the people at the time, as no one knew how far in development they really were. So people constantly had to live in fear that they would just suddenly get bombed out of nowhere. It also had physical effects on some people, like the people living near the Bravo test. But there weren't just effects at that time, the H-bomb still affects people today. It turns out that because the hydrogen bombs release a ton of radiation, the places around where they're exploded become uninhabitable. Not to mention the huge gaping hole in the ground that it leaves when blown up. So wherever there was a test, people just can't be there anymore. And it's still true to this day. So now back to Billy Joel and his song We Didn't Start the Fire. So the H-bomb doesn't really fit best into the theming of We Didn't Start the Fire, as it's not really something that newer generations are getting blamed for. But it does kind of fit with the line, no we didn't light it but we tried to fight it, because the general population at the time weren't the ones that quote-unquote lit the fire or created the bombs, but they did try to fight it by debating against the creation of them. Well, at least some people were against their creation. But overall, I think that's the best way I can connect this to the song. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Looking at you, Mr. A. And see you next time, if I ever decide to do something like this again.